Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. If anybody out there has a small bit of land, maybe an area the size of 10 by 10, and you're thinking about what to do besides just watch grass grow and keeping weeds from infesting it, perhaps you might want to consider something such as small acre farming. We're going to be talking to the owner of Growing Miracles Lavender Garden, which is located in Oregon, up in the Great Northwest, that's near the Umpqua River. We're going to learn about fulfilling dreams of being a lavender farmer, currently caring for more than 3,500 plants. Our guest today has several varieties, and we'll learn about ways that we can earn an income from growing foods within that bit of land that you may have in your backyard to sell at local farmers markets and do it successfully. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, who's going to share with us about how we can create an income doing what we love with small acre farming. Our guest, Carrie Royd. Carrie, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
Now, why don't you go ahead and tell us how you became passionate. What size is your farm, by the way?
Well, the farm itself is 80 acres. The lavender is being farmed on about 1.75 acres. So it very well fits into the small acre definition.
So let's go ahead and talk about how you decided to do what you do.
Okay. It's a fairly long story, so I'll give you a condensed version in that I had a dream in my head for about 30 years that someday I would have a lavender farm. And then, life happened and went on to career and moved away from Oregon for a while. And then in early 2016, had the opportunity to basically move back home, move back to the valley I grew up in, and start a lavender farm on my friend's farm that has this space. And so that occurred in February of 2016. By June of 2016, we had 400 lavender plants put into the ground and just hit the ground running with that. We're up to, like you mentioned, 3,500 plants in the ground at this point and are just getting ready to pick up another 500 plants of a different variety this weekend. So by the end of this year, we plan on having about 4,000 plants in the ground, which will put us at about 2.25 acres or slightly under that.
Now, why lavender?
Again, the 30-year-ago dream, it was just something that popped into my head. I love let me back up. Who can't stand in a lavender field and engage every sense of their body? I mean, the sight of it, the scent of it, running your hands through it, feeling the way it moves under your skin. You hear it rustle in the wind. You also hear the bees buzzing around in it. It's just a plant that seems to allow you to indulge your senses. And so I think that's how it first became attractive to me.
I know whenever I've been out in a lavender field, it's especially if you have a slight breeze on a nice summer day and you just watch it sway and wisp in the wind, it's quite romantic, actually.
It sure is, and as a matter of fact, just the other day, part of our fields are down on a riverbank, and so the view is just beautiful, but the wind was slightly blowing, and I knelt down in the lavender and turned my cell phone on and did a 1-minute video and then posted it on my social media that was entitled, "Here's your 1-minute meditation for the night." And in that, you heard the river, you heard the rustling of the lavender that you just described, and there were also honeybees buzzing around me. And so I was able to focus in on a few of those and let the video just capture almost all of the senses I just talked about.
Now, we're talking about the possibility for people listening how to make a living through small acreage farming. And since you've been doing this for quite a long time, how would you suggest they decide, or what process would they use to decide, well, okay, I might want to go ahead and start doing this? what to do, what to grow?
What to do and what to grow. Well, so I do believe it is possible to make a living through small acreage farming. And like you said, so a couple things to consider are how is this going to be a hobby, or is it something that you're pursuing full time? Are you trying to make a living? Are you trying to just make a little bit of income? Are you doing it just because you love the whatever it is you're picking? There are, besides lavender, there are other things that I get to experience at the farmers markets and with my friends that are doing this sort of work. And I thought if your listeners might be interested, just giving a couple ideas of other examples I've seen people growing and selling around farmers markets or some of the other events. For example, something that wouldn't take a large space, garlic and other herbs. A couple of my friends do garlic and make garlic braids, make jars of spices, including garlic, garlic, lemon, pepper, things like that. Another friend of mine grows apples. They have just a handful of apple trees that they're very old apples. They were fortunate to have those come on their property when they purchased. But they make, apple butter, apple sauce, apple cake, apple cupcakes, things like that in the midst of soap. She's also a soap maker. And so those are for sale at the farmers markets and everywhere she goes. And, it's just fabulous. They're organically grown. So she also, gets to explore that other passion where she grows everything without chemicals. Sunshine and rain is all she uses for everything she grows. Other friends have done chickens, and they're selling both eggs and meat chickens at the markets. Pork, beef, and lamb. One of my good friends comes to market each week, toting coolers with the meat that, they've grown, that they've had processed, and we'll have a line at her booth for people buying grass-fed meat like that. Goats. So goat's milk and soap, if you want to make your soap out of the goat's milk. Cows, there's a milk co-op, for lack of a better word, kind of like a CSA at our farmers market, where people come each week and get their half gallon to a gallon of milk from a man that's bringing organic milk. And even smaller space, things like microgreens, those are just starting to boom. And you can do that in your living room if you need to, but it allows a person to start a business and get going on that. I have more on my list, Daniel, and if you want me to keep on this subject, I'd be happy to keep going, or is that something that you want to touch back on a little bit later?
No, yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay.
Anything that kind of gives people a prompt or a way that they can kind of move in this direction and stimulate ideas is always welcomed.
Okay, perfect. We're just, I think, getting close to the end of the season, but many of the vendors at our markets have been selling salad greens in, 1 gallon size Ziploc bags, and so a variety of lettuces and greens. And most of the time they sell out each week because people are wanting, these delicious, homegrown, fresh vegetables. Flowers, the booths that are selling pre-made flower bouquets, some in little vases and others just in, rubber bands and newspaper wrapped around the base of them. Heirloom tomatoes, when those come in season, the tables filled with the heirloom tomatoes are almost always empty at the end of the market. And then another one, I was talking with a friend of mine today that has a business, and she does wildcrafting and foraging. So she's not even using her own property to make a living with the things that she makes, sage from secret places in eastern Oregon. Then you've got people foraging for mushrooms. So, like I say, it can even be not your own property or the inside of your house for microgreens. There are so many ideas. I just encourage people to pick something that they have a passion for or a love for, because it's not easy. You have to be ready for hard work if you're intending to use it to make a living. If you're just doing it for fun, then, it's more like a craft or a hobby. But just pick the thing you have passion for and start into it. Do a little bit of research or jump right in, whatever suits your personality, because I think people who do this sort of thing for a living are kind of more creative souls, and they can kind of figure things out as they go as well.
No doubt about that. I know sometimes people hear an opportunity to make money, and the first thing on their mind is, boy, this will be easy. And then all of a sudden they realize, wow, this is a lot more work than I expected.
Yes.
So let's talk about the arenas people, if they start moving on this and they start perhaps having enough that they can sell, a surplus, if you will. What avenues a person can pursue to sell what they grow and produce?
Okay, absolutely. And the things that I'll mention first are basically avenues that I've been using. Farmers market, first and foremost, is where I started. And right now I go to 2 a week, one on Saturday and another on Wednesday that I travel to over to the coast. So it is a time commitment for sure, but it is definitely the base where I started growing this business. I suggest that you want to be consistent in going. Basically, once you've established a customer base, people come thinking they're going to see you in that same spot every week. So the better able you are to consistently go, I think the more value you'll get out of the time you spend there. In addition to farmers markets, you'll find things like our local Umpqua Community Center. About twice a year, we'll have various events where vendors can go out and set up and sell. It allows me to touch a different segment of the population, because many of those folks aren't regular farmers market attendees. Or other little towns had a ladies' night one night and allowed us to close the street down and set up, a handful of us vendors were set up in the street. So another way to meet people that I wouldn't have just come across in another way. Festivals, for example, 14 days from today, we have our second annual Lavender Festival here at the farm. So we'll open the farm up to the public to come out and see the farm, see what we do. And a person could come and spend all day here at the festival and not spend a penny. It's free entrance, free parking. However, we're also setting up vendor booths and other activities. So it creates a way for a farmer, other artisans or growers to also generate an income by attending our festival. So agritourism, that ties right into that, allowing people to tour your farm, your space, your operation. People are very interested in how things are grown, how things are done, and you can tie in a way to make an income by sharing that stuff with people. You may have a farm stand, a roadside flower booth or roadside egg collection spot. So it can be as simple as that. I'm also going to add value-added products. So as that relates to my lavender business, besides just fresh lavender or dried lavender, I make additional things like essential oil, candles, lotions, soaps, dried lavender buds, in sachets. So if the crop you pick or the farm you choose to do has things that allow you to create a value-added product, like the garlic farmer I mentioned who makes the garlic braids. It allows you to sell something that's more valuable than just one stalk of garlic. So that might be, let's just say, $15 instead of $1 for the one piece of garlic. So it allows you to kind of appeal to a wider market because you have more things that are made from or surrounding the thing you chose to grow. And then teaching things. So I've had cooking with lavender classes. I've had wreath making classes, oil painting in the lavender classes, and jewelry making classes. I make a diffuser bracelet where you use lavender essential oil. And basically they fill up because, again, it falls into where people want something fun to do that's different than the everyday. And so you just wrap it around the things that you love to do and the things that you're good at or the things your friends are good at, because my mom was the painting teacher for that class. So, again, you use your creative soul for things, deciding things like that. And then finally, in my case, I have an online presence. I have an online store on my website and use social media marketing and sales. So both Facebook is basically where I started with my Growing Miracles Lavender Garden Facebook page. And then just this last year was encouraged that I might want to consider Instagram. And I very much didn't want to do another social media platform. But I listened to the people who told me because they were good at what they do in marketing. And it turns out it was a wonderful decision. Again, I'm reaching people I wouldn't reach any other way. So an online presence, however you want to design it, you can make it fit into your farm.
Now, you mentioned Facebook. Are there other resources or support systems available that you would suggest for people to explore?
Well, I not as far as Facebook would go, but so resources, as I think of resources and support systems, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in some groups, and so I encourage people, as it may relate to whatever it is they're choosing to grow. For example, the Farm Bureau. Joining your local chapter of the Farm Bureau has value. In my case, I'm a member and actually now part of the board for the Oregon Lavender Association, where I get to have quarterly meetings and have great contact with people who are much smarter than I am doing what I'm doing. So in the lavender industry, I've found that the farmers are very willing to share their knowledge, their lessons learned. I haven't run across anybody who's holding their information close to themselves and, just saying you make it on your own. I'm finding a giving, caring group of people that will support you so you can ask questions. Also, on that same line, the U.S. Lavender Growers Association. So finding the groups that pertain to what you're growing. The Master Gardeners is another example of something that's been a good help to me. I belong to a Facebook page called the Douglas County Women's Farmers Network. So information there. The OSU Extension Office, and then maybe more important than all of those, just other farmers, other people doing the kind of thing you do, because you'll have days that are hard, you'll have days that you don't know what to do, you'll get ideas and support from a segment or from a perspective rather, that you would have never thought of yourself. So some of the most valuable information I've received is essentially free, and it's from those kind of groups.
There's so much to consider there, but, it sounds like it's very possible for people to be very successful.
I agree.
Well, let's go ahead and go over all this again for our listeners, some of them who may have just been joining us, how they can go about having their own garden and being able to sell and where they'll be able to do these things at.
Okay, that sounds great. My first suggestion was to decide what you're interested or passionate in. That's how you decide what you want to grow and produce. And in addition to that, one thing I didn't mention is make sure you have the amount of time that you're going to want to devote to it. And another way to say that is, what amount of time do you want to devote to it? And then make sure that you're able to carve it out. And do you have the necessary equipment or access to grow what you want? If I didn't have access to tractors and implements, I couldn't have done what I wanted to do because I couldn't have purchased them on the small startup budget. The next thing you want to do is decide what avenues that you're going to use to market yourself, to sell, whether that be farmers markets, online, agritourism, small farm stand. You pick. I don't think I mentioned that, where you can have people come out to your farm and pick whatever it is you're growing, in my case, the lavender. And then decide about value-added products. What else can you make out of what you're growing? And then how can you teach people about it? Whether you bring them to you or you go to them, think of some things where you can do community outreach and step into your community with what it is that you're passionate about. Find resources that can support you, meaning the examples of the Farm Bureau or the Oregon Lavender Association, Master Gardeners, on down the list of the things that relate to your industry. And just remember that there is such a vast array of things you can choose to grow or make or farm that fit into this entire category. So you can start as small as microgreens in your living room, and go as big as having pork, beef, and lamb running around in the acreage that you have and using that to sell, the goat's milk, soap, all of that sort of thing. It's possible to make an income doing what you love.
Well, that's the key, too, is, of course, doing something you love. And, as I'm on your website, I believe is Growing Miracles Lavender Garden.com.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Correct. And I'm seeing a lot of the things that you have available here, and you've been certainly at it for a bit here. And you found this to be, pretty successful as far as you going at this for quite a long time, as we've been talking about here. But you began to do something that I think a lot of us really don't think about, especially as we were growing up, was go out there, make sure you go to high school, get your high school diploma, maybe go on to college, get a college degree, then maybe go on and get that great career. Everything was about going and working for somebody else. And as most people can tell you, I actually played a little trivia game with someone yesterday I was talking with, and I said, can you tell me what Monday morning blues are? And, of course, they begrudgingly, you can even see the look on their face change. And here it's Thursday. Then I asked them, what day is hump day? Wednesday. See, they knew all this. What would TGIF stand for? Well, thank God it's Friday. See, this is the mindset that this particular way our parents taught us has put us into. And most of us just don't seem very happy about that. And what we're sharing here today is the possibility that you, listener out there, can create a lifestyle. Nobody ever taught us that. And it takes a lot of upfront work, but once it gets in motion, and you get momentum, I'm sure you find that this is a lifestyle you couldn't think of doing anything different, would you?
Yeah. No, I sure couldn't. As it relates to the job and the work in the past, it was a very demanding career, which I loved right up until the minute I didn't. And I probably put in at least as many hours in this farming. I won't ever tell somebody that I don't work hard and that it isn't exhausting and grueling. But I'll tell you, I've never enjoyed what I'm doing more than this, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
And what do you think it is that's so different about what you do now versus when you were doing or giving your energy and time to someone else?
There are a couple different things I can mention. The rewards are very personal because it's something I created myself. So it's very personally rewarding. It's outdoors. I get to work in the dirt. One of my, worst jokes that I always say is my biggest stress sometimes is to figure out which are my cleanest dirty jeans. So everything about what's a stressor has changed for me. It's different, like the rain we got yesterday. It was too much rain. Is it going to ruin the buds that are open right now ready for harvest? It definitely put my harvest at a halt because the amount of rain we had in the past 2 days, unseasonal. So those sort of stresses are different. But, then I pop up this morning and walk out and they're okay. And so there's a joy that comes from knowing that the thing that you're caring for and loving on made it. You still may have the heartbreak of when it doesn't, but I think the rewards so far outweigh the negative. As far as in their intensity, they may be equal in their frequency of happening, but the intensity of the joy that happens when something works out and it's your baby, something you've created, I think outweighs just about anything.
Well, I'm also looking on your website, and although your property is much larger than certainly some of the listeners that we're addressing here who may have smaller properties, I noticed that you hold events. So that's probably something you didn't think about as a way that this kind of changed. And you said first it was just about the plants, and now I'm able to sell the byproducts of this at farmers markets, create new relationships with people that I probably never would have talked to before. Now I'm having, it looks like, art events on your property. What other kinds of events do you have on your property?
Well, I mentioned the painting classes. We did a rock painting class one time, too, that was pretty successful. And what we taught was a lavender design on the rock, and then let everybody paint whatever they wanted for the rest of the time. So it was just, really a social event at that point. I mentioned the U-Pick. I'll have volunteers sometimes come out, and help weed, or as much fun as that sounds, right? But people do it because they get a moment to be out in nature. That was something I forgot to mention earlier, too. That's a resource. You get people who want to volunteer with you. Then the Lavender Festival I already mentioned, and this will be our second annual Lavender Festival. Last year was just, my jaw just kept hitting the ground because I had no idea of the kind of response and turnout we would get. I would tell the other vendors that were signing up, we might have 2 people show up, we might have 2,000 people, and we had upwards of 3,000 people show up last year just to enjoy.
Where did they all come from? It's kind of like that Kevin Costner movie, Field of Dreams. Don't worry, they're coming.
That's right.
See, those are the fun miracles and the mystery of life. When you're in your particular zone doing your thing, which you were meant to do, and I'm guessing you're feeling that's this here, for you anyway, is that you just don't know what's going to happen. It's much like I love doing this, talking with people like yourself and having great conversations. And sometimes I'll have people ask me, well, do you make a lot of money doing that? I say, well, I do all right, but that doesn't even matter anymore. When you're into it long enough, none of that really even matters. What matters is the kind of experiences that you have, the kind of people that I talk with over the years, people I would have never even imagined that I would be talking to, and you just sit there just, wow. And isn't that the way life should be?
Boy, I agree with that. And people ask me about making the kind of money I make, and quite frankly, at this point, I'm reinvesting my sales because of the sales. We were able to put up a greenhouse for me last year where I'm propagating lavender. So I also hold a nursery license now and can sell baby lavender plants. So
that's
the
adorable.
most exciting part of that is I'm helping some other local lavender farmers start their farms. So we'll have more lavender farmers in our area which I see as a great benefit. What if we could have a lavender festival tour weekend where we had 4 or 5 farms here? Think of the benefit, the financial benefit and the cultural benefit of agritourism to our community. So, just because of the sales, I was able to afford the greenhouse. And then last year, because of the sales, we were able to purchase the still to allow me to distill the essential oil. And so, again, it created another avenue where I have the opportunity to make something that's pretty valuable. The lavender essential oil is a high-value product. And now I have the equipment that allows me to make it in quantity. So this year, with any profit that I make, I'm hoping that I'll get to buy a lavender debudding machine. There's a gentleman named Ricardo Bessel that makes this amazing debudding and cleaning machine that would save hours and hours and hours, times 100 or 1,000 of hand stripping lavender buds off of the stalks, and then sends them through a series of screens to clean them. So it comes out with clean lavender buds, which then would allow me to sell more easily bulk lavender buds if I wanted to, say, choose Amazon. So it's opening, the income I'm generating is opening the avenue for me to be able to purchase farming equipment that allows me to decide what direction I would like to go if I want to continue growing on this trajectory that seems to be happening so far.
Kind of extending beyond you in a way, right?
Yes. Yeah.
For those of you just joining us, we're talking with Carrie Royd and discussing the ideas for those of you out there who may have a small or perhaps large plot of land, and all you're doing is scratching your head and keeping the grass green and the weeds away, about how you might be able to convert that, in her particular case, a lavender farm, which seems to have grown beyond itself into beautiful ways. Now, just briefly before, we've got about 2 minutes left, but I noticed that as I'm on your website, growingmiracleslavendergarden.com, that's growingmiracleslavendergarden.com, your photo gallery here, and what I noticed is the other really wonderful thing is, as you were talking about the artist, and I'm seeing some of the photos, and you're seeing people, groups of people, and they're interacting and they're connecting. And boy, in a day and age like today, with everybody caught up sitting there texting and on their cell phones, whether they're driving or walking or even out having dinner, where you see a family of 4 and each person has a cell phone in their hand and nobody's talking to each other, it's refreshing to see people literally on your website in this photo gallery doing painting, connecting, working with lavender with their hands, smiling, looking like they're just honestly connecting with each other. And boy, we could sure use that.
I agree. I have enjoyed each and every one of those classes and those opportunities more than I can even say. And, they touched all ages. Each of them, well, the oil painting didn't, but kids were welcome, and all up to every age. It was something we could all do together.
Now, I only have one big question for you. Is that dragonfly painting available? I love dragon. In fact, I actually have a baseball cap that has just a dragonfly on it that I got from, it was actually a Tonto Memorial, which is a cave-dwelling structure out on the Roosevelt Lake in Arizona. And they were selling hats, and they just had like a rattlesnake or a javelina or a dragonfly, and I got the dragonfly. And then I seen that painting you have there, and it depicts actually the feeling and the mood of what a dragonfly is. And so I just thought I'd ask.
That's a painting someone else owns. It was one that I borrowed off the internet when I started. And if you will indulge me, the inspiration statement for my business is look for a day of magical things, of blossoms and dragonflies and dreams that take wings.
You have to love that. I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Beyond 50 radio program today, Carrie. Go ahead, and I'm going to let you give out your website one more time for the listeners so they can find out more.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. My website is growingmiracleslavendergarden.com. You can also find me on Facebook under Growing Miracles Lavender Garden and Instagram under Growing Miracles Lavender Garden.
Very good. Carrie, thank you so much for being on the Beyond 50 radio program today. I'm going to take this connection out into the neighborhood and see how I can connect with others as well.
Oh, Daniel, thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. You can discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50, as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.